87. The image and likeness of our spiritual body is as thoroughly defined in us as the tree in the acorn. Does the acorn consult anything outside of itself as to how it should bring forth a tree? Certainly not. It simply rests in spirit and unfolds from moment to moment as moved by the impulse within. Exactly the same law is operative in bringing forth the God-man. The external, striving, wandering will must stop its restless seeking without and repose at the center. It must be obedient to that center and learn the language of spirit. Please read this month's affirmation with me with conviction. I live fully anchored in the awareness of my unity with the whole and allow the authentic self to be revealed in my prayers, thoughts, words, and actions. And so it is.
And so it is. Thank you, Jennifer. So this month we're continuing with our theme of becoming who we are born to be and the language of the Spirit. I love these just different analogies. This month what we're delving into is the language of the Spirit, which many of us know as the qualities of God. These energies that when they are present in us, we realize that we are coming from that authentic nature, that God seed that was planted in us from the very beginning. And those particular qualities, there's 7 of them, are intrinsic in our own nature. And what I like to continue to remind myself of, and I join you in this reminder, is that there is nothing within us that is broken in any way. There's nothing broken, there's nothing missing, there's nothing wrong. We simply have come to realize that we have bought into, because of our human experience, some ideas about ourselves, each other, and life that are errors in thinking. And those thoughts are not us. You know, that's the key. It's just because we think it doesn't mean it's real. So those thoughts are not us. So as we take the masks of those beliefs off, what we find is the very purest essence of spirit is already present in us, through us, and as us. It's already there. So I am just reminded of what other masters have said, is that this process of awakening, of revealing that pure essence, is a process of subtraction, of letting go of all of these thought forms that we have believed in, and out of innocence we've believed in it. So we can't even condemn ourselves for that. Out of our innocence, we've come to believe things about ourselves, about life, that don't serve us and that don't reveal or cover over that beautiful, authentic self that we are. So, with that said, I'd like to share with you a beautiful quote from T.S. Eliot. And I've just taken more time and contemplated. This is a pretty deep quote. I brought it up last week, but then I realized there's more to this than meets the eye. It says, "We shall not cease from exploration." You know, the exploration, when we come into this incarnation, we are on a journey of exploration and discovery of who we are and what God is and what life is. And it says, "The end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." I'm reminded of the story of Dorothy of Oz. I mean, it rings true. You know, these beautiful stories are metaphors. You know, yes, it's a children's story, but also it's a metaphor for life, of how we can search and search and search and search and think somewhere over the rainbow is my good, and you know, continually think something outside of myself is going to make the difference, and then we keep realizing, we keep getting disappointed and so, you know, over and over again, thinking it's going to be something out there that'll make the difference, when all the while, when we return home to the source within us, we finally, and that's why that life experience is so important. It's the contrast, right, that's necessary for us to really be able to see that truth of who we are, of what God is, with new eyes, beginner's eyes, to see it for the first time, which is what happened after Dorothy's heart opened in the process of her journey, and she came home, and it's like, she saw it in a whole new light. It's like everything was in Technicolor all of a sudden, when it was in, you know, when it wasn't before. She was able to see the beauty and the grace and the magnificence of home, a beautiful metaphor for the divine presence within us, that source all around us, within us, all around us. I'm also reminded of the prodigal son. These are two things that struck me pretty late last night, so it's after I gave my talk to Dan. So he doesn't have these. But I thought, you know, the prodigal son, that's the same story. The story about him, you know, he had everything, supposedly everything going for him. He took off, spent all of his money, became very, felt very lowly. Everything life was falling apart. He returned home and saw it with new eyes. So don't despair, my friends. When we have our challenges in life, if we see it with new eyes, we realize it's all for the purpose of helping us to come home to ourselves with a fresh, clear, beginner's mind, so we can really be present with ourselves in love and compassion, and be present with each other and with our planet with love and compassion. So that leads right into the seventh quality, the seventh intrinsic quality of the authentic self that I was going to talk to today. Love. Love. So I'd like to begin by telling a story. This is from Chicken Soup of the Soul, Volume 1, page 3. And many years ago, a college professor asked all of his students, his sociology students, to go out into the slums of Baltimore and to do a study on 200 young men who were in high school at that time. They're boys, young men, boys. And then were to write a report or an evaluation on what their future would be like. And almost one after one, the students, after interviewing these young men, said, you know, it's hopeless. I don't see a future for this person at all. And so, like any other study, it got kind of put off, somewhere. Who knows where these studies go? But 25 years later, another professor, a different professor, found this old study and said, I wonder what's happened to all of these young men. It's 25 years later. And so he recruited a whole bunch of new sociology students and had them go out and find these young men. And of the 200, they were able to find 180 of them who still lived in the area. And so they went and they interviewed the 180. And out of those 180, 176 of them had made extraordinary changes in their lives, and they had achieved above the ordinary level of success for anybody. They were doctors, lawyers, businessmen. And this professor was astounded, with what had been predicted earlier. So what happened? What happened? So the professor decided to go ahead and do the interviewing himself. So he interviewed them and found out they were all saying, there's this teacher. That's what made the difference for me. And so he found out the name of the teacher. Sure enough, she was retired, but she was still living in the Baltimore area. And he asked for an interview, and he said, what is the magic formula? How did you reach all of these young men? And she said, there's no magic formula. I simply loved the boys. Take a breath. Sometimes we really underestimate, sometimes I really underestimate the power of just simply loving someone, simply loving them as they are. And it's a good reminder to hear something this dramatic where the predictors were, no chance for these young men, and yet with the injection of love itself, they took off and made wonderful lives for themselves. Bertrand Russell, a brilliant mathematician and philosopher from the early 1900s, wrote an entire book about what is necessary if our culture is to survive. If humanity is to survive. Pretty lengthy book, and he finally comes to, well, I found what the ingredient was, and he apologized for it. He basically said, forgive me, it's going to sound old-fashioned and stuff like that. But this is what he said. He said, what humanity needs most to thrive is love or compassion. If you feel this love, you have a motive for existence, a guide for action, a reason for courage. The golden rule. This golden rule, I remember when I went to a large conference, a large New Thought Conference Association for Global New Thought, and they had brought mystics from all the major world religions to speak to us so we could really hear and experience our oneness, particularly when we're speaking at the mystical level. And I remember there was a poster that was being circulated at that time, and it was the golden rule in many different spiritual traditions. How that golden rule runs: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's not said exactly the same way, but the essence is there. It reminds us that everyone else is truly our brother. They're truly our brothers and sisters. We're all one of the same source. We're all one huge human family, no matter what our diversity, no matter what our religion, no matter what, anything about us. We are one. So that beautiful do unto others as you would have them do unto you is a huge reminder of what love really is. It's that awareness that because we are all one huge family of the one source, sharing the same divine parent, if you will, that anything that we do to another, we are doing to ourselves. And that's why it's so important to be mindful and to choose love to the greatest extent of our awareness, realizing that we are always doing the best we can. So as we continue to wake up, as we continue to realize, as we continue to choose love more and more, that's when things really begin to change. So it's an action that we choose. I'm going to read this beautiful, beautiful quote from Dennis Merritt Jones, who wrote the book, Your Redefining Moments, Becoming Who You Were Born to Be. So he just reaffirms what I said earlier. When we strip away the many masks we wear, and remember, these masks are false beliefs. They're misconceptions of who we are and what life is and who God is. So at the core of who we are, we shall find the essence of love in its purest state. It is unconditional because it is without form. Love was and is the initiating spark of life. Think of it. If God is love, love is the initiating spark of life. The Alpha and the Omega and everything in between those 2 points. This energy of love permeates, animates, and sustains all living things, holding itself back from none, judging no one and no thing. The authentic self is love, because it is the microcosm of the great macrocosm. The original self, infinite intelligence, being, presence. Call it what you choose. In its highest vibration, unconditional love is the glue that holds this all together and exists beyond all conditions. Most important, love has selflessly individuated and imbued itself within us at the point that we call the authentic self. So with that, I would love to share with you this beautiful little story that is about choosing love for the self. So this is a story about a little boy who was overheard in his backyard. I don't know if you've ever listened in on the little ones sometimes when they have conversations, but it is just amazing. You know, I have two little grandchildren. One's 6 and one's 3, and just to listen to their little conversations, you know, they have that self-love. You can hear it in their conversation. Well, this particular little boy was overheard in the backyard. He was practicing baseball, and he was quite young, so he had this huge bat and ball, and he had a baseball cap on, and he kept throwing the ball and swinging the bat, and he'd say, "I am the greatest baseball player in the whole world." And so he kept throwing it up and missing it, and kept reaffirming, "I am the most awesome baseball player in the entire world." He kept doing this over and over again, kept missing each time and smiling. And so finally he picked up the ball and he looked at the bat. He was kind of examining them. And so he did it one more time. He threw the ball, missed it, and he said, "Wow, what a pitcher." Isn't that great? You can always find the good in any situation, right? That is self-love. That is self-love. So remember that. How can you apply that to your life when you feel like you keep missing something? Well, you can claim another quality. It's also important to choose to love others. I happened, I don't know if this ever happens to you, but I was preparing for this. I'm like, I want another story, and I want another story. And so I'm looking at my bookshelf, and it's like this Don Miguel Ruiz book just kind of jumped out at me. And it was called The Mastery of Love, so I pulled it out. And the very first story, just a perfect story, is once upon a time there was a master with a great heart that everywhere he went, he touched people. And so this particular day, he was speaking to a large crowd, and there was a man who was listening intensely listening with all his heart, listening very carefully. And he suddenly got the idea, I would like to invite this master to my house and have further conversations with him. And I would also just like to show my appreciation by just preparing a wonderful meal and whatever comes to mind. So he walked up to the master and he said, "I know you're a very busy person. I know you're probably in demand everywhere you go." He said, "But I just feel called to invite you to my home. And so would you be willing to come this evening to my house?" And the master said, "I will be there. I will be there." So anyway, the man was very excited. He went out and bought the best of food that he could find with the money that he had, and he bought the best of wine, and he also bought some clothing, some really beautiful clothing that he thought, well, this would be really wonderful for this man too. I could give it to him as a gift. And he went home and he cleaned the house and prepared the food just so, and set the table. It was just beautiful. Just everything was in place. Everything had beauty and grace, and he was just so excited. So he's waiting, and there's a knock at the door, and he opens the door, and it's a man, but it's not the master. And he was disappointed. And the man said, "I'm hungry. Do you have some bread, a piece of bread that you could feed me with?" And so he said, "Okay." He could feel his heart kind of full, and feel the love flowing. He said, "Okay, come on in." And he fed the meal that he'd prepared for the master to the man. And the man thanked him, and as he was going, he's getting all excited. Well, maybe the master will come this time. And so he re-prepares another meal, and then someone comes to the knock at the door, and it's a woman this time, and she is so thirsty. And so he brings her in, and he gives her some wine and some water, and just really tries to help to quench her thirst. And the whole time he's thinking, I wish she'd hurry up and leave so the master could come. They had this thought in his mind. So she thanked him and left, and he gets everything ready again. The food, more wine, more water. And there's a knock at the door. He opens the door, and it's a little child this time. And the child is standing there freezing and said, "I'm so cold. Could you please give me some clothes?" And again, his heart expands, and he just feels great love for this child. And he finds the clothes that he was going to give to the master and figures, well, the master will understand, and gave the clothes to the child, and the child goes on. So he waits and waits. He re-prepares everything, waits and waits, and the master doesn't come that night. So he puts everything away, goes to bed, and in his dreams, the master comes, and he says, "Oh, you finally came. You finally came. I'm so grateful that you came." And the master said, "Yes, and I also came to your house 3 times today. I came, and you gave me wine and water. I came hungry, and you gave me food. I came, and I was cold, and you clothed me." And so the man awoke and realized he'd learned a great lesson, that the master, the divine, is in everyone, including himself. And so as we extend our love to others, we are extending love to the one, to the master, to the divine. So let's breathe into that. So this thing called the divine, Matthew Fox calls it the cosmic Christ. And that this cosmic Christ essence is not only in human beings or even animals, that it's really in everything. Last week, I talked about my quest with trash and realizing that this was another expression of the divine that had been at one point someone's creation, right? Or still is someone's creation, but that simply it's important for me to be mindful of it, and whenever I'm called to move it, to properly dispose of it, to properly practice caring for the planet in the best way that I can. I had a demonstration yesterday. I was here to help Dawn, let her in early so we could do some setup. And on my way out, there was all this trash that was over along the side that the workmen had left. And it had been there for a while, and I thought, well, okay, I guess I'm called to clean it up. So I started, and these were big pieces of cardboard, huge. So I was dragging them toward the sidewalk. I figured I'd get them as far as the sidewalk, and then I'd either figure out, I couldn't load them into my car, they were too big. I'd probably just drag them down to the dumpster. So just as I got them all to the edge of the sidewalk, the construction truck pulls up. And so I walked up to him and I said, you have a truck bed, would you mind moving all of this? And he said, I have to apologize. He said, one of my workmen was supposed to dispose of that yesterday and he didn't. He said, I will gladly do that. So he picked it all up and moved it. But see, I took the first step. And did my part. So again, that's what love is all about. What is my part? What is the loving act that I can do here? Instead of getting into judgment, which I often do around trash, what is my part? What is my part? So I'm noticing out this door, in fact, I saw the man, he was blowing he was using the blower and he was blowing all the trash up into the sides of the bank over here. So after service today, if there's anybody who wants to join me, I'm going to go out and just get a bag and pick it up. And so the quest continues. The interesting thing is, though, that in truth, since I've come to this awareness, I am so much more at peace with the whole thing, which is what the blessing of all of it is when the judgment is gone, then there is, okay, what's my part? And then just to, and just to do it. That's the act of love. So to end this today, what I would like to do is to go through the 7 qualities one more time, and to do that in affirmative form. So remember, as we tune into these qualities, as we set our intention to be these qualities, we are allowing the already present authentic self to emerge. So here's the first one. And I invite you to all stand. Let's put our arms up in the air. This is a way of declaring. It's actually very powerful. This is something discovered in NLP, that if you put your arms up, if you lift your head high and say it with power, that you are more fully able to embody it. So let's do it. So the first one is wholeness. So here's what wholeness is. I am whole. I am complete. I am one with all life. Reverence. I revere all life. Because it is part of the whole. It is holy. Even the trash. Fearlessness. I know God is for me. So I am fearless. Integrity. My outer actions reflect my inner wholeness. Humility. In humility, I am teachable. I am open to new perspectives. Equanimity. I face all life's conditions with ease and grace. Love. I am the perfect system of divine love. I'm going to do that again. I'm the perfect delivery system of divine love. And so it is. Woo! Yes.